Tony Hedder. Welcome back to this meeting of the Council. We are in our final day of our long-term plan deliberations. We do have a shorter agenda in front of us as we managed to get through a number of significant proposals yesterday. But before we start, I might just ask Councillor Waru if he could please open us up with a karakia.
Kia ora no tātou hoi anō kai te mihi atu kia tātou katoa. Just want to acknowledge the opening of the new MPI building this morning that I attended. It's awesome, well attended MPI and the Conservation Department. Their new beautiful building down on the Scion site by Te Whare o Tūteata. Ātahua Te Whare, so encourage you all to go and have a jack when you get time. So atu tērā, kia ingoe tātou. E honore he korore ki te atua he maunga rongo ki te whenua he whakaaropa ki ngā tāngata katoa amini. Hanga mai rai te atua he ngā ko hau ki roto ki tēnā ki tēnō mātou. Ara i tia mana ki tia mai mātou roto i a mātou mahi katoa. E pā e ihoai o rāna e mana nei ngā tau mutinga kore. E nā toro mai toringa tapu ki rungi i a mātou e mahi ana i tēnei mahi whakahirahira. Mō Aotearoa o tira mō Rotorua whānui. Tēnei mātou aupononga e tuku whakawhetai atu ni ki a koe e te atua. Koe hoki tō mātou kai whakaora. Āmini.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Thank you very much, Councillor Waru. Just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed, so please have your mobile phones on silent. And I do expect that we will be finished for the morning tea break. We have apologies ongoing from Councillor Patterson, and it appears Councillor Maxwell isn't online, so we will also take an apology for Councillor Maxwell. May I please have a mover and a seconder? That's moved by Councillor Kai Fong, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. And we will get right into our proposal number 14, our vacant land rates remission. So I will read that out. Recommendation that Council supports option 1 as per the consultation document to remove the vacant land remission and charge full rates for water, waste collection and sewage into the final long-term plan 2024-2034. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Kiriopa, followed by Councillor O'Brien.
Marina, thank you. Thomas, you have answered a question regarding Māori land before, saying that there are other laws or policies in place that can protect Māori land. That was sort of verbally. There's nothing within any of the paperwork that we've given to identify what those policies are or what that might look like. Next door to my property in Ohinamatu, there is a community garden that's on private, multiply owned Māori land. You know, that sort of scenario where the village has chosen not to build housing there because it's to be used for other purposes that are towards the health and well-being of the village. How will that be impacted through your knowledge of what these policies are that you say exist?
Thank you, Councillor. These policies definitely do exist. It's the remissions policy that Council adopts every year as part of the rates. So I think using this example, the change that would take place is so that section at the moment would incur half the charges. And what actually occurs is that the policies that Council has in place then goes and remits those half charges, which is why the rates aren't being, the people aren't paying. So the change is that that property will now incur full rates on those charges, and our remissions policy would apply and remove all the charges rather than just half. And so that is how it applies. So in the whole, the majority of the properties that will be affected by this change are in the urban area, noting that there are some properties in rural where sections are held for various reasons that aren't being developed. In many cases, these properties don't have the ability to apply for a remission, and so they will be paying the half rates at the moment. Whereas there are some definitely that are there already with regards to Māori freehold land that are currently getting remissions under our remissions policy. And so going forward, rather than remitting the half rate charges, we will be remitting the full rate charges if that's applicable.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Te Manukura. And through the Chair, thank you, Thomas. Could I just clarify, because I think a couple of submitters may not have been 100% accurate. Could you just clarify, we're only talking about properties where there are services put down. Is that correct? Can we just clarify that just to reassure those people?
Correct. It's only where there's services. So if there's a vacant section in town and the sewer network runs past it and the water pipe runs past it and the rubbish truck runs past it, because you haven't developed that site, you get charged half the charge for service and availability. If you are living in one of the areas that doesn't have a sewer network or a water network, or the rubbish truck doesn't drive past, then you don't receive those charges, so therefore you weren't already incurring the half serviceability charge. So there's no change for those properties. Yep.
Thomas, I just have a quick question, and I know that the vacant land, it would vary in type and location. However, do you know roughly what dollar impact this may have on those who have vacant land?
Just quickly, I guess the water would be about $400, the waste collection would be about $300, and sewerage about $500, so it is substantial. So fixed charges on a residential property in town, I think, equate to about $1,900 now. So it's effectively, they were incurring half of that, and now they'll have the full amount.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. Are there any further questions? Questions from Councillor Waru? Sorry, Councillor Barker first and then Councillor Waru.
Thank you, Worship. It's actually just to get further clarity again on what Councillor O'Brien asked. You mentioned that it's mostly not in rural, but some are, and it could be if you have a waste collection or service going past your gateway. So there will be some rural blocks of land that do have waste going past their driveway but don't use it. Are they going to have their...
I can't say definitively yes or no, but rural is a little bit different in that we have one rating unit even when there's multiple properties, different ownership structures and all the rest. So for the majority of rural people, there'll be no difference because we combine and have that one rating unit. Where it might take place is that say in Rotorua Village, if there's an empty section and it hasn't been developed and isn't being used for any other purposes, then that's fine. But for the majority of rural people where you've got multiple properties as a rating unit, they're already being rated as one and will only be charged the rates that are applicable to them.
So they will be captured by this?
Yeah, and generally, so if there is a farming block, they're already incurring the waste charge because of that. And so if there's multiple rateable units that make up that, they're only receiving one charge anyway. So this really won't be applicable in that scenario because they're already incurring the charge.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Waru.
Koe te manukura o tira morena tātou katoa. Kia ora anō. Kia ora, Thomas. Just a quick question around the charging the full rates to the vacant land. For those people who, there are many reasons why they're unable to develop it or, financial hardship, whatever it might be, they would still be eligible to put in a tono to if they fall into the right criteria for permissions?
Yes, I'll just remind Council we don't have a policy for hardship, so I think that's come up some before, and so it is done on a case-by-case basis. Okay. But yes, we've got a generally wide remissions policy that allows for many scenarios. I think particularly when we're dealing with Māori freehold land, particularly not in the urban area, there is a recognition that there's a range of reasons why those properties can't be developed. Many of them don't incur these charges anyway, but the waste one probably is applicable, and we have historically and will continue to be, where it's appropriate, provide remission to recognise the challenges that they have, and so there is no change or intended change in how we rate and provide appropriate remission to those property owners.
On a case-by-case basis?
And if they fall outside of that remissions policy, then we can consider on a case by case, but I don't have the delegated authority to apply hardship under our remissions policy. So,
Okay. Thank you. Maybe hardship wasn't the right word, but thank you. You've cleared it up for me. Kia ora.
Any further questions? Is there a mover and a seconder, so we may open in the comments? That's moved by Councillor Wang, seconded by Councillor Waru. We are now open for comments. Councillor Wang, did you wish to start? Or?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this is pretty straightforward, and thank you for the questions that have clarified how this would work. I think, as mentioned already in the paper, the reasoning behind this to help hopefully encourage development of vacant land, particularly within the urban area. We want to discourage land banking, and I'm fully in support of this, especially since the services are already running past the pieces of land that this would come under. Thank you.
Councillor Kiriopa.
Yeah, I'm still uncomfortable with this. I see 160 people disagreed. My concern is, is it land banking because somebody is a developer and got a whole lot of land that they just haven't decided to develop yet, or is it land banking because someone's been left land and they just don't actually have any money to develop it? And so, and the feedback we've got from the community is don't do it. So there must, that tells me personally there's a lot of people who've got land that aren't developing it because they probably don't have the means to do so. So I'll be voting against this one. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just add some additional comments against this. I do appreciate that this is a way to seek potentially seek additional $100,000 per year in rates revenue. And while we have been attempting to stop the spend in areas, I also appreciate that to ease the burden, we need to find revenue from elsewhere. I just do believe that, unfortunately, in this economic times, it is incredibly difficult for people to be able to develop their land. We have incredibly high interest rates. It's difficult to get lending, and I am aware that there are families who have sections that they have desires to build on, but unfortunately they just financially are not able to do so yet. I would be concerned that we would be removing their future opportunity to live here in Rotorua if they had to sell that land currently. But I would be open-minded to this in future when we have better economic times and it is easier for people to develop. So while I do appreciate and support the intentions of this, I still just have concerns that we may be punishing the wrong people who still have aspirations but just aren't able to overcome the current challenges. Are there any further comments on this? Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe he te manukura. Yes, well, I've seconded the motion, so I'm going to speak to it. Yes, there was challenges, but hence the way I was asking my questions this morning around the remissions policies and stuff like that. I do believe that maybe, that it's broad enough to cover those instances where these particular kaupapa pop up. People are left land, don't necessarily have any capital or access to capital at the time to develop it. I'd like to think that this council would be, I suppose, have an open mind and an open heart at the same time when assessing these things. But eventually, there is a plan. We need to develop Rotorua, our home. But I think, and I'm going to trust in the remissions process and trust that we will do the right thing when it comes to that. And people are quite able to, as Thomas said, put in their case on a case-by-case basis to explain the situations at the time. I think, for me, that's okay. I like it, that the Māori land in particular is protected within their remissions policy. And I think we just need to make a decision here. And I support it, so kia ora.
Thank you. We've had 2 for, 2 against. Councillor Lee.
Sorry, it's just turning on. Here we go. Thank you, Your Worship. I support your analysis of this situation. Just a week ago, we got an article published in the Daily Post from our own Ray Cook, who mentioned that the commercial building consent numbers are worst in decades. I think I recognise that that's the commercial environment, not the residential. They're probably not entirely different. So it's really not the right climate to economically to try and twist the arm of people and to try and get them to be building properties. So I think the actual intended purpose of this proposal, it's the wrong time for that. Yeah, thank you.
So we have had 3 against, 2 for. I will now put this to the vote. So we currently have that council remove the vacant land remission and charge full rates for water, waste collection and sewage into the final long-term plan. All those in favour of this recommendation, please raise your hands. Any against? Do you have a vote? You abstain? Okay, so that will require a casting vote of myself, which I vote down this recommendation. So unfortunately it has been failed. Lost, yes, yes, decision's been made. Thank you. We'll now move into our final proposal. Now, just to briefly explain how this will work, this is a list of other feedback. So this is one proposal in its entirety. And how I recommend we deal with this is to have a motion that council note proposals and other feedback. Yeah, sorry. Can I read it out? Council note proposals and other feedback, and 2, direct Chief Executive to work with the organisations on responding to submitters' requests, noting that requests need to be considered within existing budgets. Yes, Councillor Waria.
Sorry, Ete Manukura, just a quick question. Are we going to be discussing the aquatic centre thing again in this?
Yes, right at the end.
Okay, kia ora.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'd prefer we go through these one by one rather than in one big lot. There are a few issues that arise on various of the items, in my view.
Sorry, we're just assisting councillors. Sorry, the purpose of taking proposal number 15, which is the feedback, which is all of the other feedback, made different requests. These requests will fall into operational and also existing budgets, and as you will see, a lot of the recommendations for staff is that council note the feedback, and also that staff will then assist these various organisations, for example, like with funding, that they'll notify them of the community funding policy and what applications they can apply to. But what we will do is open up for questions on any of these. So I am putting forward the motion to take them all as one, and I'm happy to move that, and it will come up soon and we'll get a seconder, and then I'll open up for questions. We'll take any questions on any of the items before you. So yes, you do have the opportunity to talk about any individual item in here, and then we will open up for comments. Yeah. Oh, sorry. We don't need to go through one by one because many of these are noting the feedback. So I'll open up for questions while that's getting typed up. Questions from Councillor Lee, and this is questions on any of the feedback that we've received. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. One item that appears to be missing that we did receive feedback on pertains to the Lakeland Queen. That's noticeable by its absence from this list. Yes, the Lakeland Queen submitted to us on Friday afternoon, and I was wondering if a staff report could be prepared and presented to Council in relation to that.
I'll just get the Chief Executive to respond, as that may not be necessary.
Thank you, Worship. So I believe the submitter we're talking about is the new owner of the Lakeland Queen. So I'm happy to inform Council that I have already been in touch and exchanged correspondence with the new owner, and we're undertaking a process to understand their requirements and their requests and how that might fit into Council's infrastructure. So that I can confirm that work stream is in progress, and I'm happy to update Council in due course as those progress.
Thank you.
Councillor Waru, Kiriopa and then Barker.
Kia ora, just a quick question at the Manukura. I was wondering if you could perhaps give me a bit more of a definition around what the council note, the feedback actually means. In the context of this mahi.
Through you, Madam Chair. So there are a number of ones where the council has noted. I guess most of it needs to be, in a lot of them there is a number 2, whereas we can actually work back within the organisation around those requests, and I think that's where the Mayor's motion that she's put forward is incorporating all of that yes, they've been received and noted. So it's a recognition there that all pieces of submission are taken on board and are considered by yourselves. A lot of these can be fed back into the organisation to respond to the submitters, and where we may be able to do so, proceed with some works, but that would have to be done within budgets and, of course, meeting Council's priorities in that. There are some requests in here that are significantly bigger than that and will require the organisation to do some work, which would then need to come back at later stages. But it's just effectively you receiving them, being aware that these will be fed back into the organisation, will be fed into the work program, and are likely to come back to you when required for decisions at a later date.
Thank you, Una. Through you, Madam Chair, te manukura. So that means in meetings after our plan is done, the reporting will reflect these particular things. I'm just trying to, figure out how we actually know how these things have been implemented in operations, if they are.
I'll just see if the Chief Executive wishes to add anything.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my understanding of the question is you'd like to know how the loop is closed on these matters. My proposal for that is to, over the next quarter, report back to you, perhaps in a consolidated paper, but perhaps in progressive updates, just what action we've taken to respond, reach out to each of these submitters. I'd like to just ask your patience as we work through this. There's quite a number of submitters, and some of the requests are reasonably straightforward, and we can provide answers that are concise with the information we have. Others are more complex and will require a more protracted engagement with some of these organisations. And so whilst I might set myself a target, it may take time to complete that request. I can undertake to make sure that you get regular updates on this as we progress.
And, also, sorry, just adding on that, the purpose of the motion of point 2, that Council direct the Chief Executive to work with the organisation on responding to submitters. So we're making sure he does respond, and also noting that requests need to be considered within existing budgets as well. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. Whakamaram. I just wanted to put forward that it could be as easy as, just to say, I'll take one, Te Komiti Nui o Ngāti Whakaue, they endorsed the Rotorua Lakes strategy and the use of te reo Māori, so on and so forth. So it could be in one of the operation reports could be, this is what we're doing, and it aligns to this that was, you know, in the partner we're doing bilingual such and such. It could be as simple as that. I understand there's some other ones that are a bit more complex, but I just think it's good to sort of put it out there now to ensure that, you know, we really are listening to those things that were put forward, and I appreciate your explanation, Andrew. Kia ora.
Councillor Kiriopa.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight that the Te Komiti Nui o Ngāti Whakauia submission also highlighted the need for the Ohinamatu development plan to be considered, and that isn't in there. And just a bit of feedback, I think the Kauai Urupa Cemetery, it hasn't got anything beside it other than that council note the feedback, but I think that's a critical one that needs to be looked at, because we need to be acting now. We don't want to end up not having anywhere to bury the general public. Thank you.
Thank you. We do take that feedback on board. I think point 2 covers it in... Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Do note your feedback, and I think point 2 covers that enough. And I do expect that, as they've mentioned, they require 1.1 million within the first 4 years of LTP. And so that will most certainly come back to, I'd say, an Infrastructure and Environment Committee meeting. Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Worship. Just also raising the fact that the several submissions were made on community halls and the future for those, and how that we're going to maintain and fix the ones that are having problems. Is there any space in this process for that? Those comments?
Thank you. Do note that, and I'll just check. We're not, I remember hearing it in the hearings. We're not sure if we got a specific submission in writing regarding it. However, we will note also that the community halls need to be followed up. And I do also note that there is currently work underway reviewing and looking at the community halls, which I think will be completed by the end of the year in a few months.
Thank you.
Thank you for raising that.
If it would help, I can direct you to the written submissions that were made. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Wadu.
Thank you for your indulgence, Te Manukura. Just a question, maybe for you too, Andrew, Anaru. There are specific requests in these, or in the feedback, to be included in the LTP. How do we plan to address that moving forward?
To you, Your Worship, I acknowledge that there are specific requests to include items in the LTP. My read of them is that a number of them may not have a full appreciation of what work is already budgeted for within the LTP. And so what I'm taking away from this as a result of these two motions, should they pass, would be that the CE and staff work with those organisations to understand what they were intending to achieve by requesting some funding in the LTP. That from this message, there is no additional funding allocated in the LTP to any of these items, so it would be to work within those budgets to try and achieve those communities' aspirations where they have used the words add funding into the LTP. So try and achieve the intent, but I'm reading that there's no additional funds set aside for these matters through this resolution.
Thank you. Just supplementary to that. So, for example, the first one of cable, the rain cable, the natural burial cemetery, it's not specific in the LTP, but if that was the case, if council decided to go down that track, we would have to try and make that happen within the current budget allocated to that particular project? Is that how it would work?
I'll provide perhaps a response to this, and the Chief Executive can add additional if required.
I apologise if it sounds like I'm digging. I'm not. I'm just trying to get some clarity.
Thank you. I think, just to be clear, there is also an audit process with the long-term plan, so we need to clearly show how and why we have allocated a certain amount of money, including, if needed, for substantial financial impacts, have consultation with the community as well. Unfortunately, we have received these requests at a time that the long-term plan is already underway. However, the next available opportunity to do that is through the annual plan process. So annual plans are also an opportunity to add additional things into the long-term plan, at which time, if it is different, we will consult the community then. So I do note that there is a possibility for bringing it in future, but that is why we can't put a motion forward to include it at this time.
And if I can add to that, for example, the Tribal Authority, Tuhorangi Tribal Authority have asked for the water infrastructure needs of the marae to be repaired, upgrade, as per the council investment into 3 waters. Now, that might already be in the plans. Is there a way to communicate that to those people that already might not have been aware of that? That was just an example.
Through your worship, exactly. That's exactly what my previous response was trying to communicate, that a lot of these work programs might already exist, and perhaps the submitters are speaking because they haven't quite understood what we plan to do. But there will also be instances where what we have planned to do doesn't quite fulfill what the submitters are requesting. Obviously, we will be closing the loop and going back to them. Obviously, no guarantees that the response we go back is going to fully satisfy their aspirations, but we will be doing that within existing budgets. We're able, reprioritising, to ensure that we try and meet communities' expectations in line with the community outcomes that you have adopted.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. I've got some small things and then a couple of big things. I heard some safety concerns about the old skate park, nails. Just if that's noted, that's all I need. That needs to be reviewed.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. So the day after I heard those as well, I personally visited the skate park along with the CFO. We did observe some of those. We're not expert in skate parks, but we did make a layperson's observation and directed the appropriate staff to that day inspect and remedy both those and any other observations that they noted.
By that man a beer. I heard, I'll shout there, someone raised cremating babies and suggested that we should be offering that at no charge. I think we should think about that, because that's, if that's noted, that's all I need. I think we're circling back to the aquatic centre and the learn to swim stuff. Yep. I support Councillor Kiriopa on her bringing forward the Ohanimutu safety plan as something that I think needs to be dealt with. And then one that I haven't heard submissions on, but where does the blue bath sit in our processes?
Just respond on the blue baths through Your Worship. My understanding and recollection of reading the papers that were brought to council regarding the restoration of the museum was that the restoration of the museum building was the priority. Yes. And Wilstead acknowledged that the blue baths are also a significant heritage building for Rotorua. Whilst there was significant council resources required to address the museum, there wasn't the appetite to do any further investment in the blue baths. That's my recollection of the decision at the time. as the museum progresses, I see an opportunity to update council, and based on council's appetite to further explore the blue baths and the work program required to reinstate that I believe is the appropriate method by which we could bring that back to the table.
So you've got that on your list. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And just noting, we do have down action points following these comments regarding community halls and also the Ohenimotu development plan. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Te Matakura. I'd just like to signal, if that's all the questions, that I'd like to move an amendment, please. Thank you.
Happy to take further questions, but yep, thank you.
Do you need a seconder for your motion first? I'm happy to second your motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Would you like to, are you okay if we do this first? Or do you want a question? Oh, sorry, Councillor Lee.
Thought we might want to finish off questions first before we look at amendments.
Yep. Sorry, further question from Councillor Lee.
Yes. So my issue arises from the Te Komiti Nui o Ngāti Whakaui submission. They seek confirmation of a relationship agreement between the Rotorua Lakes Council and Ngāti Whakaui. I gather this would be in addition to the partnership agreement that currently exists with Te Tata o Te Arawa. But in any event, that particular submitter, I'd like to just set the record straight, came into this chamber and stated...
Sorry, Councillor Lee, it's not Councillor's responsibilities to correct submitters. It's our responsibility to listen to them and hear them out.
Well, if council and its staff are going to act in reliance upon what the submitter stated, then the record needs to be set straight.
Apologies, Councillor Lee, that's not our responsibility to set record straight of submitters' submissions. I do note that the recommendation regarding Te Komiti Nui o Ngāti Whakaui also includes that council continues to work internally with the Te Arawa partnerships team to incorporate best practice and explore further partnerships. So at a stage where if there is the opportunity for further partnerships, and I do note that we already have existing protocol agreements with Ngāti Whakaui, which I'm not sure if they were aware of, that at that stage it could come to the relevant council or committee meeting if there was to be establishment of what they are requesting.
Yes, Madam Chair, their submission was based on the premise that Ngāti Whakaui gifted the township, quotes, as we all know. But I have a Royal Commission of Inquiry here that said that Ngāti Whakaui sold the land.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
And so that's the whole premise of their submission. Irrelevant. Seems to be somewhat undermined.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I'm afraid Councillor Lee is not qualified to be talking about these things.
Yes, I do agree. Councillor Waru's put a point of order on irrelevance. I will also put a point of order on misrepresentation. Councillor Lee, the history of Ngāti Whakaui and the benefits that this entire community has had from their gifting of significant hectares of land is well documented, is well researched, and also is well appreciated and respected by this wider Rotorua community. So I appreciate you have a personal view on this, but we will leave that there. Thank you, Councillor Lee. And I do note that if you do have concern about what will be established, that I have already confirmed that that will come to relevant council or committee meeting before doing so.
Just a point of clarification, Madam Chair. Councillor Waru raised a point of order that questioned my qualifications, I think, to read.
No, his point of order was irrelevant.
I think that's maybe how you interpreted it, but actually our job as councillors
wasn't how it was interpreted, it was how it was given.
Yes.
Councillor Lee, we will move on now. Thank you. So that appeared to be the final question. Yes, no further questions. Councillor O'Brien, you had a suggested amendment to this?
Thank you, Worship. So my suggested amendment would be that it is as written there, with the addition of that the CE provide an update in 6 months on the items presented in the report and any verbal additions that have been raised by councillors. Thank you.
Sorry, and what was just the first words that the CE?
Sorry, I'm happy for any minor wording changes, but effectively that the CE present us with an update on these subjects and any other action points verbally raised by councillors, please.
Is that an
I
addition?
appreciate on some of these, perhaps 6 months, just an update on where it sits. I'm not saying all these need to be completed. As you say, some of these fiscally may not be possible, but at least we know where we're at. Thank you.
That may be an addition to the current motion rather than an amendment of the motion. I'm not too sure. Just seeking clarification. I support it, by the way.
Yeah, I support that as well. The mover and the second would support that as well, but we'll just double check whether we need to still put that as an amendment.
As always, I'm happy to follow directions from the chair.
Thank you. We, Councillor Brown, if you're okay, we might just put that into the main motion, so we just vote once.
Happy if you are. Thank you.
Yeah, we're
I'll be
happy,
happy with
thank you.
that.
And just wondering if you want within 6 months, because some of these can.
No, happy 6 months. Thank you.
Okay.
Points of clarification,
Yes,
Madam
Councillor
Chair?
Lee?
Could you just, I think I may not have caught the process that you were going to follow, or the council was going to follow regarding the possible establishment of a relationship agreement with Ngāti Whakaui. Is that going to play out from here? It's what's written here refers to continue to work internally with Te Arawa partnerships. Is this going to come to council? How does that?
That is what I have confirmed, yes.
You have. Okay, just thank you for that confirmation. I obviously didn't catch that first time around. Thank you.
And I do note the point 2 recommendation on there, which I have already read out. Okay, so were there any final comments? There appear to be none. I do want to just acknowledge the many organisations, people who provided other feedback for us to also take into consideration. It was much appreciated. So we will now put that to the vote, point 1, 2 and 3. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? That is carried. Thank you very much, everybody. That concludes our long-term plans deliberations. Oh, sorry, apologies. Wrap it up. Very sorry. We are going to bring back an item that we had deferred from yesterday, which was the aquatic centre. So if you just give us a minute, we will get that organised for us. Thank you for that brief pause. So we will be discussing the Rotorua Aquatic Centre again. We had deferred this because we needed to do just a little bit more work. So what we are going to have to do now that that work has been done, and staff have also been able to advise the best way forward, is we will need to withdraw what we previously had to be able to update it to something that was close enough to meet council's intention. So we'll just give staff a moment to get that up on the screen for us. And also while they're doing that, just as a way of update on the next steps as well, we will adjourn this meeting but not fully close it, as on Monday we will return And by then the staff would have had an opportunity to do what I will describe as a wash-up, where we will then also be able to see what the final decisions mean and also the financial impact of that. Okay. So thank you. As a reminder, what we left with yesterday was the option 1B, do not proceed with commencement of stage 3 developments. I'll now ask the mover, Councillor Kaifong, just to overview what the suggested changes are.
Thank you, Chair. Yesterday, after the discussion, we were just concerned about the ability to repurpose the BBRO funding, but also if that was not possible, then we didn't want to lose the funding altogether. So it was trying to ensure that we had the best of both worlds in terms of optionality for transfer of the BBRO funding potentially to another wastewater scheme, or if not, then I think there was also some suggestion that Council would like to relook at what the scope was in terms of the Aquatic Centre proposed program of build, because the option we went out was in relation to spa pools. So on the basis that we wouldn't be able to get a quick determination of the transfer of the BBRO funding, what I propose is, with the consent of Councillor Barker, who seconded that motion, would be to withdraw the motion there that we do not proceed with as we moved and seconded the other day, and that I propose an amended motion which better reflects a new motion.
And what is that motion?
So
Are you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify and to support what Councillor Kaifong is actually trying to do here, I think, if I understand correctly, is allow us to make sure that if we do try to go down this path, that we have an option available to use the funding in the Aquatic Centre still if we don't get the approval to repurpose. So if that's the case, then I'm happy to remove my support for this and listen to the amended motion, if that's okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm just going to request then that for the minutes, that Go Marty, if you could please just in the minutes there record that the mover and the seconder requested that option 1B be removed. Removed from discussion.
Thank you. And now, Councillor Kaifong, you have a new motion to put forward?
Yes, so I would propose that we approve some funding in the Aquatic Centre. So perhaps if I just read the motion first, and am I able to speak to that? Okay, so firstly, to approve 200,000 in year 1 in the LTP to undertake preliminary design for a revised scope for the Aquatic Centre, explore partnership and other funding options, and to consult with the community. Secondly, to direct the CE to negotiate with the Department of Internal Affairs to allow redirection of $2.5 million of BBRO funding towards a wastewater or core infrastructure projects. And 3, should no agreement to transfer the BBRO funding be concluded by 30 September 24, the Council approves $2.8 million towards the preferred revised scope for the Aquatic Centre in year 2 of the LTP.
I'll be happy to second this. Did you wish to speak to that now or afterwards?
If it needs further explanation as to why I've proposed what I have, is that I know originally we...
Oh, sorry, would you like to speak to it now or at the end?
I'm happy to speak to it now if it provides greater clarity to the councillors as to why we've still left some funding in there. So originally, the original motion that we had on the table was to remove the funding altogether, but I think that there was still some concern from councillors that if it was removed altogether, then this project would effectively, that would be the end of whatever we did at the aquatic centre, and that there was still some support in terms of from councillors and from the public in general to look at other options which weren't part of option 1B, which was around the Learn to Swim pool, or if partnership opportunities were available to explore hydrocide, so a commercial opportunity there. So to enable the staff to revise the scope of those works, or to look at resequencing that work, some money would need to be allowed for. I know some of the work may have already been done, but we probably need to allow some budget for that. So that was the suggestion, to leave a small sum of money in there in year one to investigate that work. Secondly, that the CE be given a sufficient time to go and renegotiate with the Department of Internal Affairs for an appropriate project. So I've left that sufficiently wide rather than hampering the CE in his negotiations, because we don't as yet have a decision from council as to what those funds could be directed. We had some suggestions yesterday, but I think it's probably better to leave it wider when the CE goes to renegotiate, that we would be looking towards either a wastewater or other core infrastructure project or projects. And thirdly, that if we don't have that agreement, then we haven't lost the funding altogether, because if we make the decision to pull all of the aquatic centre proposal, then effectively we haven't got anything on the table to put that $2.5 million towards. So if we don't get a transfer, then we would still proceed with $2.8 million, so $3 million in total there.
Thank you very much. I will open up now for questions and then take any comments. If there are any questions, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Te Matakura. Sorry, could I just clarify, so where's the 200,000 coming from?
Through you, Your Worship, so the original budget was $3 million, so it's 2.8 in year 2, 200,000 in year 1, 2.5 out of the overall 3 as part of the Better Off funding, and 500,000 of the overall funding is from council.
Okay, and thank you. And assuming this motion is carried, could I ask, we have here direct the CE to negotiate with DIA to allow the redirection of Better Off funding towards a wastewater or core infrastructure project. Would it not help for us to identify what those projects are now, decided by councillors? Like, for example, for me, it would be either the wastewater treatment plant or split it between the 2 sewage schemes. But that's just me. I'd happy to listen to other alternatives. But I just wonder if we shouldn't focus that a bit more to be on. Thank you.
Through Your Worship, I don't have any objection to that. The only caution I would put on it is I am, as at this point, I totally understand your intent, and I will certainly take that as direction. What I'm unclear on at this point is what the conditions will be for the DIA to redirect that funding. For example, there might be a requirement that it's a growth project, and in that case it may not meet the criteria of those 2 projects. And so in the interest of giving me the options to negotiate something, I'm happy to take that direction, but perhaps would not restrict me so much if it weren't written into the recommendation itself.
Further questions, Councillor Brown?
Not so much a question. I would support where Councillor O'Brien's coming from, and splitting it would be my preference, but I understand where you're coming from. It's open, deal with it, see where we can land it.
Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Your Worship. The only question I have pertains to the date of the 30th of September. That seems an arbitrary date. Surely we can get some sort of response out of government sooner or later. The benefit of having a date at which we fall off a cliff doesn't seem sensible to me.
you. We will note that feedback. Any further questions? There appears to be none. We'll open up for comments. I'll start just as the seconder. I would certainly support this amended motion, and thank you very much, Councillor Kaifong, for working through what may be the best way to achieve all of the outcomes, because there is still a strong desire in our community, as we saw from our submissions, and particularly the young people, to see some additional leisure facilities at the aquatic centre. We have also heard from people in our lakes community how important it is for our children to be able to learn to swim as well. So although we are in financially challenging times, and we are working in our best efforts to focus spending on core services and infrastructure, there is still a need to invest in the future, and I think that this allows that opportunity to take that preliminary design work and to also continue to explore partnership funding, because I do believe that things like hydroslides could have a commercial benefit, and we could seek to find interested investors into this as well. So I think that this helps to achieve the best interests of everyone, while acknowledging that if we do have some government funding, and we do have a government who signalled they'd prefer this to go to Three Waters, we also have communities that are dealing with significant financial costs of Three Waters that are urgent and more immediate than big leisure activities. So I am speaking in support of this and will look to support it. Are there any further comments? Councillor Rupa.
I absolutely support this. 74 people said do nothing, but 156 people said either start the work, add hydroslides, or do the lot. More than 60% of under 25s in Rotorua are Māori. 1 in 4 of those children live in poverty. The other thing is spas, pensioners, I know, who aqua jog for their health. They like to use the spas to warm up after aqua jogging, and the pensioners especially, but families can't afford. There's lots of families in our community can't afford to use the poly pools. The spas at the aquatic centre were their only access to warm baths. So that's I just wanted to comment on those points as to why I definitely support this. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you. Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe te manukura o tira kai te mihi au kia Councillor Kaifong. Thank you, Sandra, for putting this forward and clearing that up for us. It was plaguing on my mind yesterday, and I'm glad that I threw a bit of a spanner in the works in the end, because I think we've come out with a better way forward. And in saying, I agree with the, splitting up, contributing towards particular projects like the Rotoiti, Rotoma sewage scheme and Tarawera, but also might be an opportunity to, I'm going to put a bit of a plug in there for Modia, who are very strong in their submission around a reticulation system there for out there. They've never had it, and they've been asking for a long time, so it might be an opportunity to look at that as well as the stormwater issues that they raised. So, I think it's a good way, it's a win-win. We can't redirect it, then we can still show some tangible mahi moving forward for the aquatic centre. As I said yesterday, it's a bit hard when, it's always those rangatahi things that get put on the chopping block at right at the start. So I'm glad we've come to this kaupapa. So at least it still keeps it live. And if we are able to redirect it, then it's still a benefit. Everyone be better off. So kia ora.
Thank you. We've had 3 in support. We've got one final comment. Councillor Lee.
Madam Chair, we get a firm response from government, whether or not it's by the 30th of September, as to whether that funding is able to be transferred. And I'd appreciate a seconder, if one is available. Remove the date in paragraph 3. Should no agreement to transfer the Better Off funding be concluded, that council approves the 22.8 million towards the preferred revised scope for the aquatic centre.
I
So
might-
I don't think we should put a hard deadline on central government to make this happen by 30th of September 2024. That's all.
I might just get some advice from the Chief Executive if he thinks there'll be any impact to that, or why 30th of September is proposed.
Look, thank you, Your Worship. My understanding is that central government's intention is to conclude any discussions on transfer by that date. The other consideration is that I thought Council would want to put some timelines around my negotiations so that they don't protract out beyond that time, so that the community has certainty either which way on which way the money's going. So that's the only advice I would give. It's totally a council's decision.
Sorry, just to clarify, central government have said they want to conclude these discussions by 30th of September?
No, they haven't given me that date. They haven't shared that date, but my understanding is that it is sooner rather than later and well within that date. So that's the only indication that I've got. And as I said in the second part of my kōrero, that it's just a point to give me some constraints rather than allowing those negotiations to be protracted and drag on. Operationally, I would try and come back as soon as possible anyway to this council.
I mean, obviously, if it concludes before that, that's good for everybody. If it doesn't, who knows, there could be an earthquake tomorrow and it sits on the minister's desk for a while. That's why I was concerned about the hard deadline.
Did you still wish to propose that amendment and
Yes,
seconder?
if we
Is
have
there
a
a
seconder.
seconder for that?
Of course not.
Sorry, there appear to be none, but I think we note your intention, but certainly as the seconder of the current motion, I believe that this is actually helpful, having that date in, because it expresses that there is urgency to get this certainty on where the funding will go. So that concludes our comments. We have the motions before us. I won't read them out again. I'll put that to the vote now. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? That is carried. Thank you. That concludes our deliberations on the proposals. Thank you very much for everyone who has been involved in this. We will now adjourn the meeting to return on the 10th, which is Monday, on Monday, 9:30 a.m, where our staff will then present to us the wash-up of this. I might just ask if we could please have a closing karakia from Councillor Waru to conclude our morning today. Thank you.
Kia ora mo tātou, tēnā tātou e wā tātou mahi. Kei noi tātou, e te karaiti tohunga mātou, e karaiti tohunga mātou, e ihua tohunga mātou, e tō mātou matua i te rangi kia tapu tō ingoa, e tāu mai tau rangatiratanga kia mea tia tāu e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua. E riti anō ki tō te rangi homai kia mātou ai ane he taro mō mātou mo tēnei rā. Urua o mātou hara me mātou hoki e muru nei o te hunga e harana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea kia whakawaia engari whakaorangia mātou i te kino. Nō hoki te rangatiratanga te kaha me te kororia, ake, āmine.
Thank you very much, everyone. The meeting is adjourned.